My name is Celeste Morgan, 42 years old. The clink of glassware shimmered like bells beneath the vaulted ceiling of the rented hall, the chandeliers trembling with each note of music. Velvet curtains in deep silver framed the room, catching the glow of lilac lights. I had chosen this place for my daughter's sweet 16, after months of stretching my salary, shuffling bills, and telling myself it was worth it to give her one night where she could feel celebrated, not overlooked. Lily's eyes had lit up the moment we walked in, the kind of light I wanted to preserve forever. I had been careful about every detail. The silver dress Lily had saved up for hung from her shoulders perfectly. The cupcakes bore delicate edible flowers that looked like they'd been plucked from a meadow. The DJ was already easing into one of her favorite songs, the kind with a beat she always drummed out on the steering wheel when I drove her to school. Everything, down to the photo booth with silly props, was exactly as she'd pictured on her Pinterest boards. I'd even paid extra to make sure her playlists were respected. I hadn't asked for a dime from anyone, not from my parents, who often claimed they just couldn't help financially, but somehow always had fresh renovations for their kitchen. Not from my sister Laura, who made a show of complaining about grocery bills while dropping photos of weekend spa trips online. This was Lily's night, and it was mine to give. But maybe I should have noticed. 2 weeks earlier, my mom had asked 3 separate times what time we'd arrive at the hall. She had leaned into the question too hard, repeating it like a script, not like casual curiosity. So, exactly when will you be walking in, Celeste? Around 7 or later? At the time, I'd brushed it off. Parents can be nosy, but now, standing there, the memory pressed down like a warning I had ignored. The moment came too fast to stop. The music cut. A shrill silence hit the room. Then, confetti cannons, bursting from the corners like cheap fireworks, raining down in pink and gold. Spotlights snapped on, and the crowd shouted as if on cue. "Happy 15th, Sarah." For a split second, my brain refused to process it. I thought maybe we'd walked into the wrong hall, but then my gaze landed on the banner strung across the far wall, huge glitter letters spelling "Happy 15th, Sarah." The cake in the center was a blinding pink tower with sugar roses, not the elegant silver confection I'd ordered. The balloons were pastel, not lilac. And there, at the center table, sat Laura and her daughter Sarah, tearing into gift wrap while my parents beamed like royalty on their thrones. My chest turned hollow. Lily's hand slipped into mine. Mom stood and waved me over, as if nothing were strange. "Celeste, come on, sit. Isn't this wonderful?" We thought it made more sense to celebrate together. Both girls, one big party. Her voice carried, sweet and casual, but beneath it was calculation. I recognized it the way you recognize an old scar. My father sat rigid, studying his wine glass, his silence complicit as always. I glanced at Lily. Her smile wavered, tiny, fragile. She whispered, "Don't worry, Mom." I wanted to scream, to demand why they thought my daughter's 16th, her milestone, the one she had dreamed about, could be hijacked by a 15-year-old who hadn't even planned a party. But I saw the tremor in Lily's lips, the way she was already shrinking inside herself, and I knew. If I made a scene, the humiliation would brand her, not them. So I turned us both around and walked out. The ride home was a vacuum of silence, only the soft hum of the engine and the occasional sigh from Lily. She stared out the window, her reflection broken by passing streetlights. When we finally pulled into the driveway, she didn't wait for me. She slipped off her heels, walked barefoot into the house, and dropped onto the couch in her pajamas like the night had never happened. "Order anything you want," I told her. "No limits tonight." She picked Thai food, pad see ew with extra broccoli. She ate cross-legged in front of the TV, hair pulled into a messy bun, chopsticks clumsily clacking. I sat beside her, pretending I wasn't on the verge of tears. Later, when she went upstairs, I opened my laptop. If they thought they could braid themselves into my life by leeching off my accounts, they were wrong. The gas card my mom had been using, gone. Laura's grocery charges on one of my store accounts, closed. Amazon login, where Sarah's innocent orders had slipped in, new password. Netflix, canceled. DoorDash, where late-night meals I never ate had appeared, terminated. Click by click, I severed every string they had tied into me. By midnight, the family group chat exploded. "Mom, Emily, really, that was unnecessary." "Laura, what is your problem?" Sarah, from Laura's phone. Then it escalated. Walls of text, half accusations, half dramatics. Mom claimed I had humiliated Sarah. Laura accused me of embarrassing her in front of friends. My father's contribution was a single thumbs up emoji after typing, "Let's all calm down." I was staring at my phone, fury and disbelief tangling inside me, when the pounding started on the front door. Sharp, insistent fists rattling the frame. I froze in the hallway. Lily's bedroom light was still on upstairs. I could picture her awake, listening. The pounding grew harsher, desperate. I didn't check the peephole right away. Didn't need to. My gut already knew who it was. And with every strike of that fist on my door, I felt it. This wasn't just about a ruined party. It was about something deeper, a family that thrived on rewriting stories until I was the villain for refusing to play along. I waited, hand hovering over the lock, the vibration of each knock traveling through the wood into my chest. And then silence. I counted out 60 seconds, breath tight, before I reached for the handle. I opened the door a crack, and Laura pushed past with the kind of force that told me she hadn't come for conversation. Her perfume hit first, sweet and cloying, sitting over the sourness of stale champagne. The pink cocktail dress clung to her like a costume that had outlived the party. Her hair was frizzing at the ends, a halo of static around a face that had been crying or drinking or both. She tossed her purse onto the couch without looking where it landed and turned on me as if the room had been waiting for her cue. "You ruined everything," she said, breath sharp, words snapping off her tongue. "Do you have any idea what you did to Sarah?" My mouth opened, then closed. "I ruined everything?" "Yes, you!" she shot back, marching toward the kitchen as though the floor plan belonged to her. "We tried to do something nice, combine parties. Less money, less hassle. You made it a spectacle." I followed slowly, keeping my voice even. "You combined my daughter's sweet 16 with your child's 15th, without telling me, in a hall I paid for, with a cake I didn't order and colors Lily never chose, and somehow I ruined it?" She whirled around. For a heartbeat, her eyes flicked over my shoulder toward the staircase, like she was checking for an audience. That's when I understood something simple and ugly. My sister did not know how to exist without one. "You could have stayed," she said, chin tipping up. "Let Lily have her little speech after dinner." But no, drama queen had to throw a fit. "I walked out quietly," I said, "because Lily is not a prop." "You're impossible." Her laugh was bright and glassy. "You've always made everything difficult. Mom was trying to save you money. You should be grateful." "Grateful for what?" I said, "for being erased?" Her gaze slid to the cabinets. I felt it happen before I understood it. The decision forming, the flicker of impulse that always used to precede the mess I would later clean up. She stepped past me and opened the upper cabinet where I keep the hand-thrown ceramics Lily and I carried home from Santa Fe. Wrapped in tissue, years ago, a trip that still smelled like cedar and dust in my mind. She reached up, took a plate, looked me straight in the face, and let it fall. The crash split the air. Shards spun across the tile. "Stop," I said, too soft. She took another, let it fall. My body moved before my brain did, a half step forward, a hand lifted, too late for the third plate. Another bloom of sound. "Laura," I said, louder now, "stop!" She tilted her head. "You never listened, Celeste. I am done tiptoeing. You embarrassed me in front of my friends. You think you're better than us because you plan things and make lists and talk like a headmistress." She dragged her fingers across the rim of the fourth plate, thumb pale, knuckle whitening. "You could have rolled with it. But no, precious Lily needed her perfect Pinterest moment." The fourth plate shattered like sleep. Behind me, a small sound. Lily had come halfway down the stairs and stopped. She was barefoot in pajama shorts, hair scraped into a makeshift bun that listed to one side. Her face was blank, the kind of blank that isn't emptiness so much as containment, like a jar with the lid screwed tight. "Back upstairs," I said gently without taking my eyes off my sister. "It's okay." "It is not okay," Laura hissed. "Your daughter needs to learn the world doesn't revolve around her." Something inside me clicked into place, a quiet lock turning. I had swallowed so many smaller insults over the years that I knew the shape of them without tasting. The times when sharing had meant I went without. The holidays when Lily's gifts were smaller, excused with a laugh about teaching her resilience. The dinners where I was the one washing plates while Laura held court. The family stories rewritten until I was the cautionary tale for refusing to hand over what I had earned. "You're not my sister anymore," I said. It wasn't a shout. It wasn't even a tremor. The words arrived the way winter does, calm, absolute, leaving frost where warmth used to be. Laura froze, plate midair. A fleeting shock opened in her eyes, and then the performance remembered its lines. She laughed, the sound too high to be natural. You're pathetic, always have been. You think being cold makes you strong? It just makes you alone. She dropped the plate anyway. The cabinet now held only 3 remaining from the set, standing like survivors who don't know they've survived. She brushed past me toward the door, so close the fabric of her dress rasped my arm. In the hallway, she grabbed the frame photo on the entry table. Lily, age 10, grinning under a sun hat, and flicked the corner with her nail so it rattled in its mount. Her mouth twisted. Raising her to be just like you. Distant. Bitter. Go home, Laura, I said. Sober up. Go to hell. She yanked the door open and slammed it. The photo tipped off the table and cracked against the floor. I stood very still in the wake of it, breath moving in and out like something I had to remember to do. Lily came the rest of the way down, crouched beside me, and together we picked up the ceramic fragments one by one. Her hands were careful. We didn't speak. There was nothing that words could improve. After Lily went back upstairs, I swept and vacuumed and wiped until the kitchen looked as if the night had not tried to use it as a stage. I wrapped the 3 surviving plates and towels and set them in the back of the pantry. I washed the tiny cuts on my fingers where a shard had kissed skin and went to bed with the image of Lily's face at the stairwell burned behind my eyes. Morning arrived without apology. No one called. No one came. I made coffee that tasted like ash and called in sick, listening to the house breathe around me. Lily slept late, then patted down in slippers and ate toast with honey, eyes on some homework sheet she wasn't really reading. We agreed without saying it to make the day quiet. 2 weeks slid by, a silence that hummed under the skin. My phone showed life in other tabs. Work emails, automated billing reminders, a coupon for a store I'd closed, but the family chat stayed like a museum exhibit behind glass. Occasionally, a message would drop in from Mom, smoothing the edges of the story, offering a gentle rewrite. It was a misunderstanding, she'd say in voicemail. We just thought you'd be fine with it. She didn't mention the plates. She never mentioned the plates. One evening, I took the broom from the closet to sweep a corner I'd already swept. I don't know why. Sometimes you need the motion, not the result. Lily was upstairs, sketching at her desk, a picture of a girl in a too big hoodie, kneecaps drawn like commas, eyes that looked like they were keeping a secret from themselves. The clock said 9:17 when the doorbell rang, followed by a knock, not loud enough to be Laura's. I checked the peephole. Rain sluiced down the glass of the porch light, distorting the figure on the step into a watercolor of grays. He shifted, and the lines resolved into Greg. Shoulders hunched in a damp jacket, hair plastered to his forehead, one hand gripping a folded sheet of paper, the other holding a reusable grocery bag as if it were proof of personhood. I opened the door. He didn't step in. Can I come in for a minute? I nodded and moved aside. He wiped his shoes mechanically on the mat and stood in the kitchen as if afraid to touch anything. I put water on for tea without asking. Sometimes politeness is the only plank on a washed-out bridge. He laid the paper on the table. I don't want to bother you, he began, voice ruined by nights without sleep. I didn't know where else to go. The paper was a damage report. My eyes skimmed the lines. Cracked pipe behind the laundry machines, flooded basement, ruined drywall, water heater destroyed, mold growth beginning. Estimated repairs, $10,274. I'm sorry, he said, and I believed him even before he explained what for. About the party. I overheard Laura and your mom talking 2 days before. I should have said something. I thought I don't know. Go along. He rubbed a hand over his face. Insurance says it was a slow leak. They're calling it neglect. He swallowed. If the mold reaches the main floor. He didn't finish. I'm not asking for money. He kept his eyes on the table. I just needed to try something else before I don't know what I'm doing anymore. The kettle clicked. I poured tea. The steam curled between us. The weight of the past weeks pressed down, and under it, something tender lifted its head, annoying in its persistence, familiar in its shape. Compassion, even after the smash. The part of me that wanted Sarah not to sleep on a couch above a rotting floor. I can't promise anything, I said, but I hear you. He nodded, not relieved so much as less alone. He tucked the bag closer to his leg, the way people do when they've had to defend their belongings from chaos. He stood to leave. "Thank you for letting me in," he said, and the words felt heavier than they looked. After he left, I sat with the report under the kitchen light until the numbers blurred and the paper felt warm from my hands. Upstairs, Lily's pencil moved in soft, dependable scratches. Rain laddered down the window. I turned off the light and the room held its breath. The next morning, my mother's voicemail landed like a prepared statement. "How's Lily? Did she recover from the disappointment?" she asked, as if the night had been a clerical error. "Laura is under pressure. This could be a chance for us to come together." The edges of her sentence were sanded clean. No mention of confetti cannons. No mention of plates. I didn't call back. I transferred $4,000 to Greg's account that afternoon. No message, no memo. Just numbers moving from one place to another, as if money were a language you could speak instead of explaining yourself to people who enjoyed misunderstanding you. 2 days later, a text from Laura. "Thanks, that'll help for now." I stared at the screen until the words went flat, like letters could die of their own shallowness. I didn't reply. The silence grew longer legs and learned to walk around the house. And then, a week after the transfer, close to 10 at night, my phone rang with a number I didn't know. I almost let it go. Something, area code, intuition, the way the rain had started again, made me answer. "Aunt Celeste?" The voice was low and careful, not quite a whisper. "It's Sarah. Is Lily home?" "She's upstairs," I said. "Why?" "I need to show you something," she said. "Please don't tell my mom." 10 minutes later, there was a small knock. 3 taps, the kind a child makes when she's trying not to wake a house. I opened the door to find Sarah on the porch, hair dripping, hoodie soaked dark at the cuffs, phone clenched in her hand like a torch. She didn't ask to come in. She stepped across the threshold and held out the phone, the screen already lit. A grainy video filled it, a basement in grayscale, time-stamped 2:17 a.m. The camera watched a door open, a figure descend in a long shirt, bare feet pale on concrete. The figure walked to the shutoff valve, gripped, and turned. A rush of water hissed into the room. The figure stood very still for the span of a heartbeat. Then she screamed. "Mom," Sarah said. Her voice didn't crack. It lowered, as if making itself small to survive. "I found it on Dad's laptop. He was downloading everything for the insurance. He didn't see this one." My hand tightened on the phone. The world did not tilt. It settled. It brought every line into focus. Sarah exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for days. I didn't know who else to tell. Behind her, the rain thickened, a curtain closing on an act that had never been a surprise. Somewhere in the house, Lily's footsteps paused, the house listening with us. Before I could say a word, before I could ask what this meant or where we went from here, the doorbell rang again. Once, twice, sharp, deliberate, not Laura's. Through the peephole, I saw Greg. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week, rain cuffing his shoulders, eyes blown wide and hollow. He was holding his phone like a verdict, and in the other hand, a folder swollen with papers that hated the light. Greg's face behind the rain-streaked glass looked carved out of exhaustion. His knuckles were pale around the folder he carried. When I opened the door, he didn't step in right away. He hovered on the threshold, as if afraid my house would swallow him, or worse, that he would contaminate it by crossing over. "Celeste," he said, voice low, rain dripping from his hairline onto his collar. "I think I need to show you something." Sarah stiffened beside me. Her hoodie clung damp to her shoulders, her phone still in my hand, like evidence too fragile to pocket. I met her eyes. She shook her head once, small, urgent. She hadn't wanted him to know yet. But some truths don't wait for permission. I ushered him inside, closed the door, and motioned toward the kitchen table. He set down the folder with care, as though each page were a live wire. When he opened it, the scent of wet paper and mildew puffed into the room. "Damage report," he said, but his voice cracked. "They're saying 10,000 at minimum. Mold's in the walls now. If it spreads upstairs..." He pressed his palms flat against the table. "We don't have that kind of money." He pulled out photographs, walls blotched with black, insulation hanging like seaweed, a water heater corroded to orange rust. The images made the basement look like it had drowned. I slid Sarah's phone across the table, screen frozen on the grainy footage. Her mother in a long shirt, barefoot, deliberate hand on the shut-off valve. The hiss of rushing water. The scream that followed, staged too perfectly to be spontaneous. Greg stared. At first his eyes didn't register what they were seeing. Then his throat worked, and he gripped the phone so tightly I thought the glass might crack. He whispered, "Jesus Christ." Sarah folded her arms across herself, hoodie sleeves swallowing her hands. "I didn't mean for you to find out this way," she murmured. I didn't know what to do." Greg's shoulders caved in, the kind of collapse that isn't physical but moral. He set the phone down, like it burned. "She told me the leak was old, that we missed it. She swore." His voice broke, and he looked at me, not Sarah. I thought I was just bad at noticing. I believed her. I wanted to tell him he wasn't crazy, that he wasn't blind, that manipulation is a science Laura had perfected long before pipes and valves were involved. But I stayed quiet. Sometimes truth needs silence around it to echo properly. Sarah slipped away upstairs. I heard her door click shut, a soft punctuation. Greg sat in my kitchen, his damp jacket darkening the chair, his hands trembling against the folder. "What do I do?" he asked. Not to me, maybe not even to himself, but to the air between us. Police? Insurance? Divorce? Each word sounded like it scraped his throat raw. "You start with protecting Sarah," I said. "Everything else comes after." He nodded, though the gesture was too slow, as if moving through tar. Then he gathered the folder, tucked the phone into his pocket, and stood. He looked older than he had an hour ago, like time had shoved him forward against his will. "I'm sorry," he said again at the door. "For all of it, for not stopping the party, for not stopping this." When he left, the house was quieter than before, but not in a peaceful way. It was the hush after glass breaks, the kind where you're waiting to see if blood follows. That night, I lay awake listening to the wind shove against the windows. Lily's breathing drifted faintly through the wall, steady but shallow, the way she slept when she was carrying too much unspoken weight. I stared at the ceiling, counting cracks, remembering Laura's laugh when she smashed my plates. The sound of it echoed in my skull, braided now with the scream from the video, both rehearsed, both meant to wound and perform. By morning, my mother's voice was on voicemail again, syrupy as ever. "Celeste, sweetheart, we all need to take a breath. Laura's under so much stress. You could use this chance to show grace, bring everyone back together. Call me." Grace. That was her word. She wielded it like a bandage she could slap over any fracture, no matter how deep. I didn't call back. Instead, I logged into my account and stared at the numbers. 4,000 already gone, 10,000 more needed. My own house needed a water heater soon. The office still doubled as a storage closet. Lily had been dropping hints about a weekend trip. Something simple, just the two of us, a reset. All of it mattered. And yet my finger hovered over the transfer button again, because I couldn't erase the image of Sarah curled on my porch like a stray. I hated myself for it, but compassion is sometimes indistinguishable from weakness. I sent another 2,000. No message, no explanation, just a transaction. This time Greg didn't respond, but Laura did. A single sentence. "Thanks. That'll help for now." I threw the phone onto the couch. It landed face down, mercifully muting the vibration that followed seconds later. A new string of messages lighting up the family group chat. "Mom, your sister is going through a lot. Please be understanding. Laura, you always act like the victim. We were trying to celebrate family." Sarah, again from Laura's phone. "Dad, let's all calm down." The absurdity almost made me laugh. Almost. Instead, I closed the chat and powered the phone off. That evening, Lily lingered in the doorway of my bedroom. "Mom?" "Yeah?" Her eyes flicked down to her hands, where a pencil smudge streaked across her knuckle. "Is Sarah okay?" I considered the easy lie. Then I said, "She's scared." Lily nodded once, a tiny motion. "Sucks," she said, voice flat. Then she disappeared down the hall. I lay awake again, replaying her tone. The flatness wasn't indifference. It was recognition. She was learning early what had taken me decades, that in this family, silence wasn't blindness. It was survival. 3 nights later, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number, same area code. I answered. "Aunt Celeste?" It was Sarah. Her voice was rushed, like she was calling from under a blanket. "I need to ask you something. Please don't tell my mom." My stomach sank. "What is it?" "I think I need to leave." The line went quiet after that, only her breathing loud against the receiver. Then the call dropped. I stared at the dark phone screen, pulse drumming, waiting for it to light up again. It didn't. And just before dawn, Lily's voice carried from upstairs. "Mom, someone's outside." The gray of morning had barely thinned the sky when I moved to the front door. My hand hesitated on the knob, braced against whatever waited. Through the peephole, I saw her, Sarah, curled on the porch in a hoodie too thin for the chill, backpack clutched to her chest, pillow jammed behind her head as if she had set up camp in desperation. One sneaker had slipped off, lying sideways on the doormat. She hadn't knocked. She hadn't texted again. She had simply come. I opened the door slowly. She stirred instantly, eyes flashing open without the haze of sleep. She didn't flinch at being caught there. She didn't apologize. She just picked up her things, stepped inside, and moved past me as if she'd lived here all along. In the kitchen, she lowered her backpack to the floor and whispered, "I don't want to go back." Her voice was steady, but her fingers twisted in her sleeves, pulling threads loose. I made her toast, scrambled eggs, poured juice. She ate quietly, each bite careful, like someone testing the ground before stepping forward. When Lily patted downstairs, hair mussed from sleep, she blinked at Sarah at the table. Not shock, just a pause, as if the unspoken truth had arrived exactly as expected. They exchanged a look, one that carried more understanding than words. Lily went back upstairs and returned with her favorite hoodie, the gray one with the stitched daisy on the sleeve. She dropped it in Sarah's lap. Sarah didn't say thank you, but she slipped it on and kept it. That afternoon, Greg appeared on the porch. He didn't knock, only stood in the drizzle with his hands jammed in his jacket pockets, eyes hollow, hair unwashed. I stepped outside, shutting the door behind me so the girls wouldn't hear. "I didn't know she left," he said immediately. His voice was shredded, half apology, half plea. "Laura was yelling all night, accusing everyone of plotting against her. She tried to take Sarah's phone. She must have pushed past and ran. I didn't even hear the door. She's safe," I told him. "Fed, calm." He nodded, exhaling like he'd been underwater. "Can she stay? Just for a few days?" His eyes darted away, shame burning through the request. "I know I'm asking too much." "She can stay as long as she needs," I said. Then I fixed my voice. "But no more lies. No more pretending nothing's wrong. I won't be dragged back into that." His shoulders slumped in relief. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a white envelope, pressing it into my hand. Inside, a neat stack of $2,100 bills. "I found out she used your money," he said quietly. "For furniture, a new home office. I thought you should have this." I stared at the cash. It wasn't about money anymore. Still, I closed the envelope and slipped it into my pocket. Not for Laura, for me, for Lily, for Sarah. That night, the two girls curled up in Lily's room, laughter muffled through the door. It was brittle at first, then loosened into real giggles over popcorn and a bad horror movie. The sound felt like sunlight cracking through blinds after weeks of storm. The peace lasted until Saturday morning, when the crunch of gravel in the driveway jolted me upright. Through the window, I saw my parents' old Buick parked crooked across the stones. Both of them climbed out, moving like a unit, purposeful, armed with righteousness. I opened the door before they could ring. "Celeste," my mother began without greeting. Her lipstick was precise, her expression set in practiced disappointment. "We need to talk about what you're doing." My father shifted beside her, gaze fixed somewhere over my shoulder. "You are escalating things," Mom continued. "Laura is struggling. You're making her look unstable, which only makes things worse for Sarah. This is family business. You should have let us handle it." "Family business," I repeated. The words tasted like rust. "You've always liked being the one who's right," she pressed, stepping closer, perfume cloying. "But sometimes family needs grace more than justice." For a moment, I almost laughed at the script of it, how she could fold betrayal into benevolence, how she could reframe cruelty as a test of my compassion. But I didn't. I let silence sit heavy between us, then turned and walked back inside, closing the door behind me. Their voices muffled, then faded as they retreated to the car. Later that day, Laura herself arrived. No warning. Her SUV pulled into the driveway like it owned the gravel. She strode to the door in oversized sunglasses and a fresh blowout, polished armor for a crumbling war. She didn't wait for an invitation. She pounded her fist against the wood until I opened. Her gaze swept the living room, suspicion tightening her jaw, as though she expected to find a cult hiding behind the curtains. "You win," she said finally, tearing off the sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed, mascara smudged. "She's yours now. Is that what you wanted?" "Leave, Laura," I said. Instead, she walked into the kitchen, her heels clicking on the tile. Her eyes landed on a wine glass drying in the rack, the last one of the set she'd once shattered with such glee. She picked it up, turned it in her hand, and without hesitation hurled it against the wall. The crash rang through the house, shards skittering across the floor. She turned to me, wild and trembling. "You're not my sister anymore." "All right," I said, calm, final. The words seemed to knock the wind out of her. She had expected a fight, a plea, a denial. What she got instead was a closed door she couldn't pry open. Her face twisted, somewhere between fury and grief. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard a different picture frame toppled from the entry table and splintered. Upstairs, I heard the girls' laughter cut off mid-breath. Silence followed, taut and listening. That evening, the phone buzzed with Greg's name. His voice on the line was thin, shaking. "It happened again," he said. "Another leak. Upstairs this time, kitchen ceiling." She refused to let the repair team back in, said they were spying on her. "The floorboards are buckling, the wiring's dangerous, and—" His voice broke. "Insurance won't touch it." I sank into a chair, staring at the wall where the glass had exploded hours earlier, the mark of it still wet. The house was falling apart, and not just hers. Greg's words rang in my ears long after the call ended. Another leak. This time upstairs, spilling rot through the ceiling. His voice had trembled with something more than exhaustion. It was the sound of a man watching the floor drop beneath him while still trying to hold his child steady. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope of bills he had pressed into my hand days earlier. 1,000 small choices stacked in paper. Across from me, the wall still bore faint streaks from where Laura's wine glass had exploded. The mess was gone, but the scar remained. For 2 days, the phone stayed quiet. Then my parents came again, this time separately. Dad called privately, his voice low, worn. "We can't help her anymore," he admitted. "We already loaned money last month. She used it for new furniture. Your mother doesn't know how to tell her no, but I do. It's over, Celeste. We don't have it." When Mom rang later, her tone was syrup over steel. "She's coping," she insisted, as if destruction could be rebranded as resilience. "You've always been the practical one. Maybe you can step in now." Step in. That was her phrase, the same one she used when I was 12 and handed their overdue bills like puzzles to solve. That evening, Lily stood in my doorway, arms folded tight across her chest. Her voice was steady, though her eyes shone. "Don't. Please don't." She didn't have to say Laura's name. She didn't have to explain. But later, Sarah sat on the edge of the couch, silent, hunched. She didn't ask for anything either, yet her stillness screamed louder than words. So I gave in, not for Laura, not for my mother's rewriting of Grace. I did it for Sarah, for Greg, for the echo of my own child's silence years ago when she learned that being overlooked was the family's favorite game. I paid for 2 mold inspections, half the repair costs. It stripped nearly $3,200 from my account on top of the $4,000 I had already sent. Days later, a message blinked on my phone. "Thank you." Nothing else, not apology, not recognition, just a brittle politeness typed from Laura's number, as if I were a bank dispersing loans. I didn't respond. 3 days later, I opened Facebook out of habit and saw her face, smiling in a freshly painted living room, the caption blaring, "New chapter, we rise," a new rug at her feet. The couch fluffed and arranged like a showroom. I scrolled past before I could choke on it. Sarah hadn't liked the post. Neither had Greg. The weeks that followed bled into each other. Summer edged near. The girls began talking about colleges. Sometimes I overheard them whispering in Lily's room about dorms, about sharing a space, about getting as far away as possible. Their laughter floated down the hall at night like proof that they were already building something of their own. One morning, while rummaging in the closet for extra towels, I found a box I hadn't touched since that night at the hall. Inside lay the banner, crumpled but legible. "Happy birthday, Sarah," in glitter letters. The sight of it made my throat tighten, the memory of confetti and stolen spotlights pressing hard against my chest. I carried it outside and dropped it into the trash bin, closing the lid with a finality that felt heavier than plastic should. That afternoon, a neighbor caught me at the mailbox. Mrs. Dalton, the type who noticed everything but rarely spoke. She tilted her head toward Laura's house down the street. "Funny," she said. "I remember last year when the ceiling accidentally collapsed after that fight with Greg. Always something, isn't it?" Her voice held no judgment, only weary observation. Always something. That night, as the girls sat at the kitchen table sketching, Lily shading the curve of a shoulder, Sarah sketching a daisy onto the sleeve of a drawn hoodie, I brewed tea and watched them in silence, their heads bent close together, pencils scratching. Two teenagers building a world safe enough to dream inside. My phone buzzed on the counter. A new message lit the screen. One line. "You've destroyed this family." Laura's words sat there, venom and fragility stitched together. I deleted it without answering. Because the truth was clear, written in the laughter upstairs, in the sketchbooks filling with color, in the air finally light enough to breathe. I hadn't destroyed anything. I had just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken. The days settled into a rhythm that felt almost like peace. Mornings began with toast and eggs, laughter spilling soft across the kitchen table as Lily and Sarah compared playlists or fought gently over who got the last clean mug. Evenings ended with the sound of pencils scratching across paper, sketchbooks left open like secret diaries. For the first time in months, the house breathed without choking. Yet beneath the calm, I felt the hum of something unfinished. Sarah was sleeping in Lily's room, her backpack tucked neatly under the desk as if she might have to leave at a moment's notice. She never spoke about Laura unless asked directly, and even then her answers were clipped, careful. But she lingered in doorways, stayed close to Lily's side, and once, when she thought I wasn't looking, she traced her finger across the stitches of the daisy on the sleeve of Lily's hoodie as if it were a talisman. I began to think about permanence. What if Laura showed up with the police, demanding her daughter back? What if Greg lost his resolve, pulled Sarah home into the chaos she had run from? I found myself Googling late at night. Temporary guardianship, minor consent laws, evidence of neglect. Each search felt like peering over the edge of a cliff I wasn't sure I wanted to climb down. One Thursday afternoon, the Buick returned. My parents again, uninvited. This time, they didn't bother with the driveway. They parked crooked across my lawn. Mom's voice carried the moment I cracked the door. "You're making this worse, Celeste. We've spoken to Laura. She's fragile, but she deserves compassion. You need to stop inflaming things." Dad nodded along, though his eyes betrayed him. Tired, defeated, as though even he no longer believed the words. "You want me to send Sarah back into a house with mold, leaks, and a mother who smashed my dishes in front of my daughter?" I asked. Mom's mouth tightened. "You exaggerate. You always have. Families fight, Celeste. Families forgive. You've always liked being right, but sometimes grace matters more than justice." There it was again. Grace, wielded like a shield. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I simply closed the door, their voices muffling to a distant drone before silence swallowed them whole. That night, after the girls had gone upstairs, I sat at the kitchen table with a pen and a pad of paper. I began writing every incident, every smashed plate, every unpaid debt, every voicemail that rewrote reality. A record, in case I ever needed one. My hand shook, but the ink flowed steady. The next morning, I tucked the envelope of cash Greg had given me into a lockbox with the notes. Insurance against the chaos. Life inched forward. The girls spoke openly now about applying to the same colleges. Sometimes I caught them in the kitchen late at night, brewing tea, giggling at some private joke. Their laughter threaded through the house, stitching cracks shut that I had thought would remain permanent. One evening, I walked past Lily's room and found them both asleep on the floor, sketchbooks scattered, pencils still in hand. Sarah's head rested on Lily's shoulder, and Lily's arm draped protectively across her cousin's stomach. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe they were safe here, at least for now. Weeks later, Laura came again. She didn't arrive furious this time. No sunglasses, no blowout, just a woman smaller than I remembered. Her frame wilted inside a coat too big. She stood on the porch, arms crossed against the wind, her face pale. "I need help," she said. "Not just money, with Sarah, with everything." Her voice wavered, brittle, on the edge of breaking. I let her words hang in the air. Behind me, I felt Lily's presence before I saw her. She had come to the doorway, arms folded tight, her jaw set. "Don't," she whispered. "Please don't." She didn't say the name. She didn't need to. Still, I helped. Not for Laura, not because she had earned anything resembling redemption. I did it for Sarah, who was still a child, for Greg, who was still trying to pull order from rubble, and for the part of myself that couldn't quite turn away from the ruins, even knowing they might crush me. I paid for 2 more inspections, for part of the repairs. It cost me nearly $3,200 more, money I could have used for Lily's future, for our own roof. Laura's reply, when the transfer cleared, was as stark as the others. Thank you. Polite, empty. 3 days later, she posted a photo online, smiling in her newly painted living room, captioned, "New chapter. We rise." Sarah didn't like the post, didn't comment. She didn't mention it at all. The summer heat settled in. Lily and Sarah spent afternoons sprawled across the porch with iced tea and college brochures. I found their shared lists tucked into couch cushions, schools circled in different colors, dorms compared, dreams charted side by side. One morning, while cleaning out a closet, I found the old birthday banner again, the one I'd sworn I'd thrown out. Somehow it had survived, wedged behind a box. "Happy birthday, Sarah," glitter letters, dull with dust. I stared at it for a long time, the weight of that night pressing down like a storm cloud. Then I carried it outside, dropped it into the trash bin, and shut the lid. I didn't tell anyone, because this wasn't about forgiveness anymore. It was about finally letting go. And yet, as twilight fell that night, my phone lit up on the counter. An unknown number. Just one line. "It isn't over." I turned the phone face down, letting the screen go dark. Upstairs, laughter bubbled from Lily's room, warm and unbroken. That was what I chose to keep.